Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to our best chess games of all time series. So in this series we're following the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history, and today I wanted to show you a really cool game played by the legendary Jose Raul Capablanca. So the game was played in 1918 in New York against Marc Fonaroff. This was a casual game, but this game really deserves to be on our chess list of these best chess games of all time because it had so many great tactical elements. It had also some great instructive elements. That's why I decided to show you this game, because you see in this game that piece activity is a huge element in chess games, and also weaknesses are something that you should avoid. So weaknesses of course can be a weak pawn or a weak square, so creating weaknesses in your own position can really improve the position of your opponent's pieces, and here in this game Jose Raul Capablanca will exploit all of the weaknesses that Marc Fonaroff will leave him, and that's why I think this is really an instructive but also cool game that has been played by Jose Raul Capablanca with some great attacking possibilities. And you see how the dynamics in the game can change by simply playing some pawn moves. Pawn moves are really dangerous moves, and that's why I think this is one of the most popular chess games played by Jose Raul Capablanca. Although Jose Raul Capablanca wasn't so popular maybe in 1918, he became then much more later the world champion by winning the world championship match against Emanuel Asker. But here he showed really already his talent, and he crushed his opponent with a beautiful queen sacrifice. So let's check out the game. We have e4 played by Capablanca, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and d4, the Scotch game. And the Scotch game can be really messed up sometimes. I'm trying always to avoid as black the Scotch game. It's really too complicated sometimes for me. So here d6 played by Marc Fonaroff, and for me it seems already that it's a mistake, because here in the game knight to c3 was played by Jose Raul Capablanca. He tried to spice up the position to keep the dynamics in the game, but I still think that you can play here immediately here instead of this move knight to c3, d takes e5, because after knight takes e5, knight takes e5, d takes e5, queen to d8 can be played, and after king to d8 the black will never be able again to castle. So I think here bishop to e3, c3, maybe knight to d2, queenside castling preparation here by white, bishop to c4, keeping an activity in the game is perfectly fine. So it's not such a bad decision sometimes in chess to simplify the position. But okay, here Capablanca tried to spice it up, but you can also go here d5, going into sort of a King's Indian setup. After something like knight to e7, we can play simply on the queenside expansion here, with the possibility then after that maybe to play b4 c5. Here maybe f5 would be black's best choice, but now knight to c3, knight to f6, and bishop to g5 is also a good move, I think. Perfectly fine. You cannot lose the pawn here. It's we can simply take, and after f takes e5 we can go here knight to d2 and attack this pawn, queen to e2, and still play on this very aggressive positional pin here by the bishop. So the pawn structure would be weakened in front of black's king. So I think this were also two good lines, but in the game knight to c3 was played. So here d takes e5 and d5 Capablanca didn't play. He played the flexible move knight to c3, and Marc Fonaroff tried knight to f6. We have bishop to b5 and bishop to d7, because the immediate tactical threat is of course here to play d5 with the spinning idea. So that's why bishop to d7 had to be played, and now castling played by Capablanca, bishop to e7. And you see how weird a little bit this position of black's is. The pieces are a little bit too crowded. They don't have such a good activity. The bishops are not so well placed, and here Capablanca tried again to keep the dynamics in the game. That's why we love Capablanca's game. But again, I think when we play maybe in this intermediate level, maybe in this amateur level, sometimes it's good to recognize simplifications in chess games. For instance, I would play immediately here the move d5 if I would have this position. After something like knight to b8, you have the possibility to play bishop takes d7, and that's the main point here. This move d4 d5 is sort of a switch in which we had when we have the pawn here on d4, we have a dynamic position. After move d5, it's a static position, so it's like a switch. It's we're taking simply the dynamics off in the game, and I think here after knight to b8 we can simply trade off this likes with bishops. It's not a problem because after knight takes d7, when we evaluate piece activity, this bishop is blocked out by its own pawns, and here this bishop has a huge activity. So we have a static position, so it means we could maybe go into positional trades of pieces by playing bishop to g5, and there is one tactical threat which black can do, but that's only possible if black castles. So far it's not possible because sometimes white can fall into this trap with knight takes d5. After knight takes d5, bishop takes g5, and knight takes g5, queen takes g5, and it seems now that black has gained the pawn, but knight to c7 is this tactical idea because we haven't castled. So I think here Capablanca should have gone here with the move d5 immediately, creating this positional advantages. But in the game again he tried to keep the dynamics in the game, which is of course his style. He has only this different style. In the game e takes d4, knight takes d4 was played, and now knight takes d4, queen takes d4, bishop takes b5, knight takes b5, and this is now really a simplified position. Basically, if black plays this next couple of moves very accurate, I think nothing can happen. The position is really too simplified. The pieces are off the board, although you have this d5 weakness. But here after castling, Capablanca tried queen to c3, getting out of this d file, trying to get a rook on the d file where the queen is, and maybe try a pawn breakthrough with the move e5. And here Marc Fonaroff made, I think, the main mistake in the game, because when we evaluate pawn structures, you don't want to have weak squares or weak pawns. So weak pawns and weak squares are the main weaknesses that you can have in your own position. So you have now two choices. First of all, you of course don't like here this knight's activity. This knight is already on your side of the board. You feel a little bit pressured by this knight. So you have basically two choices: to play a6 or c6 to kick away the knight. But here Marc Fonaroff played the move c6, and that's the main mistake, I think. You can do the same thing with the move a6, but after the move c6, you have weakened the pawn structure again too much, and now the main target here, the main tactical target, is this pawn on d6. That's the main weakness in black's position, and that's why I don't like this move. Although in some occasions you can create this kind of pawn structures in order to maybe restrict minor piece activity here, because this pawns are covering here, this d6 and c6 pawn are covering these four important squares. But that's only possible when you have much more pieces on the board. Here, of course, Capablanca played knight to d4, and here knight to d7 was played. Here, Marc Fonaroff tries to get this bishop on the square of f6 and maybe try to attack the queen. But here, Capablanca played simply knight to f5. You see how this knight gets very actively into the game, and here bishop to f6 was played, and queen to g3. The queen comes on a very active square. Not that the queen is only attacking here this g7 pawn, it's also attacking here this weak d6 pawn. And you see that was all possible because Marc Fonaroff didn't play the move a6. Now Capablanca has a clear target, which is a good thing in chess, to have clear planning and also attacking possibilities. Here in the game, knight to e5 was played, and now of course bishop to f4, activating all of the pieces, and now rook to d1 is the main idea to attack this d6 weakness. So in the game, queen to c7 was played, and now of course rook to d1, and Marc Fonaroff tried to hang on to this position with the move rook to d8, and you can guess what Capablanca did. He played, of course, a very, very aggressive rook sacrifice. He played rook takes d6. Rook takes d6 was played, and here Capablanca tried bishop to e5, and still this position is playable for Marc Fonaroff because he missed one move. After the move queen to a5, I think this is an equal game because here I think black can go into a drawish position, but Marc Fonaroff didn't do that. Let's see a possible continuation in this position. After the move bishop to c3, attacking the queen because the rook was hanging here by the queen. The queen created this very dangerous attack. Here we can simply take bishop takes c3, and after b takes c3, Capablanca of course threatens here to checkmate on g7, so black would be forced to play the move of rook to g6, and now knight to e7, king to h8 would be a fourth line, and after knight takes g6, h takes g6, and I think that black can hang on to this position because although black is a pawn down, but still these are main weaknesses in white's position, so these are really some weak pawns. There are too many pawn islands in white's position, so I think this would be a drawish position. But in the game, after the move bishop to e5, Marc Fonaroff tried to deflect here this deflect the rook and try to grab this bishop, but that was his main mistake because here Jose Raul Capablanca made a really great tactical calculation. He simply took rook takes d1, bishop takes e5, and here you can pause the video and try to find the winning move, try to find the winning tactical sequence. It's a great tactical move that here Capablanca saw. It's simply one of these moves. If you see it, you're a great player. If you don't, you're probably intermediate player or a weak player. Here Capablanca, I hope you could have found this move, played the move knight to h6 first. The king has to escape. You cannot take, of course, the knight. King to h8, and if this position is still complicated to you, try to pause now the video and try to find the best next move. It's of course one of the most popular moves in chess history. Here Capablanca played the move queen takes e5, sacrificing the queen. The problem is after queen takes e5, we have here the possibility to play knight takes f7 with a fork. So if the king goes here, if the king goes on g8, then we can simply take the queen and continue this endgame with one piece up. So here in this position, Marc Fonaroff resigned, because if you play rook takes f7, then we have here simply rook to d8, and it's game over. It's checkmate. You still can put this rook in between, but again, it's game over. So great attack by Capablanca. Still, Marc Fonaroff had his defensive chances, but okay, I wanted to show you this game because it had really this great tactics at the end of this game, and as I said, still Jose Raul Capablanca was a young player. Then he became really stronger and stronger and faced the mighty Emanuel Lasker for the World Championship and managed to become the next world champion in chess. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this game. I enjoyed it a lot. I've watched it now many times. Meanwhile, you can watch my other best chess games of all time with some more great tactical battles from the history. And you can also watch my commented chess games played by computers if you want to see computers battling in their own best chess games. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thank you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.